Now, in the aftermath of Sierra Leone's brutal civil war, which ended in 2002, the nation embarked on a journey of reconstruction and democratic renewal. Central to this effort was the emergence of civil society organizations, CSOs, mentioned as beacon of accountability and transparency. Now, over 2 decades later, the landscape is now marred by persistent allegations of corruption and abuse of power, not only within successive governments, but also among the very CSOs tasked with safeguarding civil liberties. Successive administrations have been tainted by corruption scandals. The establishment of the Anti-Corruption Commission, ACC, in 2000 was a pivotal move to address these issues. Yet, challenges persist, as evidenced by the arrest of the then Minister of Transport and Communication in 2001 for alleged involvement in the illegal diamond scandal. Now, the incident accompanied by an exhausting list of other more troubling arrests and subtle instances, if you like, of censorship, free speech and attacks against freedom of association, even during a post-repeal era of the 1965 Public Order Act. All of these is a stark reminder of deep-seated corruption and anathema that fueled the Sierra Leonean Civil War. Now, the recent controversy surrounding Dutch drug kingpin Jos Lydekkers, who is reportedly found cowering in Sierra Leone and was seen amongst the nation's first family, further underscores challenges in combating corruption and maintaining the rule of law. Civil society organizations, once hailed as the moral compass of the nation, have not been immune to immediate post-war period and allegations of corruption. Now, there are several projects which had come under NGOs, but all of these did not yield much fruit. They have often been described as a period of madness, which projected that also fueled other problems. Now, this influx, driven by anger among, often resulted in initiatives that do not seek accountability and fairness, of all doubled to become a very serious problem for civil society activism in Sierra Leone. There is also a tsunami of accusations against the former, suggesting that some organizations operate as extensions of societal entities, thereby compromising their neutrality and accountability and disturbing public trust generally. So this evening, we are asking indeed whether these civil society organizations, which had been established to maintain trust in Sierra Leone, are failing public trust. This evening, I am joined by 2 gentlemen who will be discussing with me this evening. We have Alphonsus Bani Padden. He is the Executive Secretary, Human Rights Defenders Network, and also flanked by Abdul Fatoma. He is Chief Executive of Chadi. And also will be joined by Valnora Edwin, who is Chairperson, African Women Leaders Network, on Zoom later on in the program. But good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Victor Jones, and you're watching and listening to AYV on Sunday. We are indeed broadcasting from the top of Tar Hill in the heart of the capital city, Freetown, where you're watching and listening to us from. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, gents.
We'll also be hearing from a live audience, also will be joining us later on the program this evening. You also are privileged to send text messages to the program. You could drop your comments on our Facebook page, AYV News, and we'll ensure to read them before the program ends. Now, let me start with you, Alphonsus. Would you describe the situation in Sierra Leone at the moment as being fair to the citizens when it comes to advocacy from civil society organizations? Would you say you've been fair in your advocacy in Sierra Leone?
Of course, yes. I would say we have been fair and I've been very sincere to the cause of advocacy in Sierra Leone. And in fact, we fought very hard for the enjoyment of democracy. Had it not been for civil society, even when we were pushing at the time when Mada Bio was a military officer, the NPRC, when we had the Bintimani 1, Bintimani 2, that was civil society. The main incidents that brought down Fode Sanko, it was also led and organized by civil society. If we're enjoying peace today in this country, civil society play a critical role. So I would say without hesitation that we have done our job and our bits. The area where your introduction was suggesting that people have lost confidence on civil society, I would say that that is a little bit misleading, and I will give a justification for that reason. The country has been polarized and has been divided. If I'm saying something today that speaks to the minds and hearts of the ruling SLPP party, at least I have spoken for and on behalf of the citizens of this country. If I do not speak anything that touched the mind and heart of the opposition or People's Congress Party, I am an SLPP, I'm not speaking the truth. So if you take that scenario, it does not reflect the true picture of how we interpret the role of civil society in this country. People in opposition, in both parties, want us to do their bits. Civil society, we are not politicians. We will not speak for and on behalf of politicians. We will always speak on issues that are relevant to the society, not speaking for or what politicians want us to speak or do. And that is the area where people are saying they have lost the trust and confidence of civil society. It's coming from political parties, not typically citizens in this country, based on what they have seen, what we have done, and the contributions we have made in terms of peace and development in this country.
Let me usher in Abdul. Section 17 of the Public Order Act of 1965 is one of the most bastardized laws in Sierra Leone. You know, any person I quote or individual who intends to take part in ongoing or holding any procession must notify the Commissioner of Police in writing of the intention. In nearly all instances, as we've seen in recent time, requests of such nature have been turned down on grounds of, well, public disorder, in most cases, security breaches in the country. Do you think the Sierra Leone Police is being honest with the people of Sierra Leone?
We are a direct victim of such provision, as recent as last year and probably under the review of 6 months ago. And our organization made a formal request as per law, notifying the Sierra Leone Police, that's the Inspector General of Police, and requesting for our organization, CHRDI, to stage a protest in front of the Ministry of Technical and Higher Education in disagreement of the action of the ministry by unlawfully what we consider as an unlawful action to dissolve the University of Sierra Leone Court. So we came up with several options. One, we called a press conference, we give an ultimatum, and the ultimatum passed, and then we promised that we will also stage a peaceful protest. And the Sierra Leone Police disrespectfully denied us that thing, and they failed to meet the 3 test requirement. One, which the Constitution says, they should bring a justification if our protest will bring issues around threat to national security. And 2, public immorality. And 3, national health crisis, like during the time of COVID. Probably they are afraid maybe will spread more disease or other sicknesses. But then they didn't give any justification to us. They just said that they cannot. But we have been seeing over 10 years ago in this country, when people want to usher in president or other ministers or MP, they will definitely have the leeway to come openly and celebrate. Even in the midst of COVID, we saw people celebrating Leone style when we were on the lockdown. But then, if you, as a citizen of this country, you have a very strong disagreement on government policy, the Sierra Leone police will be used as a machine to silence the fundamental right that guaranteed by the Constitution of this country and by a document that was signed back in 1983 and ratified as the African the African Charter of Human and People's Rights. Sierra Leone needs to respect that. Then you have the International Covenant on Civic and Political Rights, which we are signatory to. We are state party to that. So all of these international instruments and regional instruments, including our Constitution, has been under constant, bastardization by state operators, and which really bring a scary situation, undermine the fundamental values of democracy. But then, why we are in this perpetual disregard for rule of law? Institutions like the judiciary, who's supposed to interpret law, is very notorious also in disregarding rule of law. We are a victim as I speak, our organization. As recent as October, our organization wrote a letter to the judiciary to give us statistics of cases that are before judges and magistrates. These are public information. We were not asking for the names. We're asking for the figures. And based on Right to Access to Information Act 2013, these are public information. And secondly, we ask them to make a public disclosure on the code of conduct of judicial officials. I mean, this is a public document too. You need to know, and people who are watching us needs to know what code of conduct guide judicial officials. If a judge or a magistrate, for example, goes out of, that code of conduct, then you will be able to file in a complaint about the attitude of that judge. But then if the judiciary kept this information away, the 14 days elapsed with no response from them, no acknowledgement, no response, and 7 days notice was given to them by Right to Access to Information by law for them to respond to our request, and if not, they will be fined. Since that time, the 7 days have passed, and they have not. Just imagine an institution that's supposed to actually be an example of bringing checks and balances in democratic system, and wholeheartedly agree to destabilize the provisions in the constitutions that place an obligation on them that the operation of the judiciary and other laws of Sierra Leone and other laws should be respected during their time of executing their job. So, you go to Parliament, you witness the same thing. You go to the executive. So what are these democratic values that we are really dipping into as a country? Over 21 years, we have enjoyed an uninterrupted democratic process through the ballot box. But this has not helped to translate into the democratic values. Ineffectiveness of political parties like the oppositions. They don't want to hold the ruling government accountable. And what they bench on is civil society. And with their justification, they are there to be the watchdog, failing to understand that civil society cannot function without resources. Even if it cannot function without resources, Alfonso cannot move from point A to point B without someone paying for his transport or provide fuel or other thing. Alfonso may need to rent office for the Human Rights Defenders Network to function. You don't have the culture of volunteerism in this country where people will come in and say, I want to volunteer, even after retirement. So when people comes today, the next day, they start asking for transport. And then if civil society don't have money, how do you think we're going to cover something, you know, at the Baramuya police post to know that someone has been detained there unlawfully and illegally? And how do you want us to actually monitor court trials? But then the ineffectiveness of this political party in our democratic process, one or through their own responsibility to other sector in the democratic process. So sometimes I see that people in this country are so much unfair with civil society and civil society operations.
Let me now hear from Vanlora Edwin. She's the chairperson, African Women Leaders Network. She's joining us on Zoom. Good evening, Vanlora. It's a pleasure having you on board.
Thank you. Good evening, all of you.
Indeed. You've been hearing from Abdul. He has made a very strong case for why he thinks that civil society organizations could be termed as ineffective. He has said, well, should I say, accusing the Judiciary of Sierra Leone of notoriety, also ineffectiveness of the opposition parties in Sierra Leone. What are your views generally?
I think over time, the public would have forgotten the role of civil society. And as my colleagues have highlighted, we have been very critical. We have been instrumental in ensuring that we are in a more or less stable environment at this point in time, looking back at the history maybe 23 years ago. Certainly the way the civil society activities had started then and what we see now are different, but that doesn't mean that we're not playing our role. And it's important for citizens to know that the role we play, we say we are watchdogs of what is going on. We stand between the state and the citizens. We bring out issues like my colleague was saying, the ordinary citizen, the judiciary that would like to see your conduct. But because civil society has the various, we have built professionalism and we understand how some of these systems are supposed to work in terms of transparency and accountability and responsiveness to the needs of the citizen, we can make those demands. And so most times, if we're not on the media or raising in big debates, citizens are of the view that we're not doing anything. But most times we are behind the scenes doing a lot. Civil society is not only engaging at the national level. We work with ECOWAS, we are at the African Union level, we are at the UN level, because it's now mandatory that when governments are engaging in certain processes, civil society has to be a part. So you can see that even when government moves to certain meeting, like on the high-level political forum, doing their VNL, they're supposed to go with civil society organizations. They're supposed to support them in a lot of things that they're doing. So we are playing our role. And some of the examples that have been given are some of the challenges we face. Now we should realize that in the context of Sierra Leone, the donor community is quite small. And because of the issues over time on the ratings we have about corruption, they're very strict with their funding. And when you see what colleagues in Ghana and Nigeria, and even in the Gambia, what they receive, we don't have that amount of money. And even when they do give us this amount of money, there are so many restrictions. And it's our livelihood at one end, but also it's a passion. And as we are saying, we have to pay rent offices, we have to pay utilities, we have to register with so many entities, state entities, and you have to pay for that as well. There's no spirit of volunteerism. When I started working, I was not being paid, but I worked there till I got to where I am today. And most of the students or those who come in as interns or volunteers, they want you to pay them. So you need all that resources to keep the organization going, because you have to send out monitors, you have to do research, you have to have meetings, you have to send people out to meetings so that you can get adequate information to do effective advocacy. And you need resources to do that. And we don't have that amount of resources. So on the flip side, if there's some level of concern about probably how civil society organizations operate today, one of the greatest challenges we do have is the fact that we have very limited resources to do the work that we need to do. Secondly, I think sometimes I wouldn't totally defend that we're all perfect. You definitely have the rotten eggs in the basket, but we have to realize that some organizations might have allowed themselves to be drifted off with partisan politics because they need money. And so they lose sight of the bigger picture. But those are very few. And there are a great number of organizations at the national level, professional bodies, even community-based organizations that are doing excellent work. I do remember at the time of Ebola, even in COVID, there were so many organizations. Ebola, we were doing at that time of that CGG, we were doing what we call the Lunchbox, where we partnered with another organization and we were preparing food for the nurses. We went to the military hospital, we went to PTS1, PTS2, or whatever it was called at that time. We even went to quarantine homes where we made donations as other people were doing. And these were done by civil society organizations. We are flagging out issues, even in recent times, all the issues around the audit reports, the issue around the drug issues. Civil society are raising the flag because our role is also to educate the public, create that space for a debate. We ensure that there is a level platform where even alternative views can be shared and there is a valid discussion.
Fatoma, let me say this to you. One might want to ask, is lack of resources, enough reason to be corrupt and ineffective?
So I would not say it's a blanket civil society organizations are corrupt. I would not say that. And secondly, I will still not say that we're ineffective. As I've just highlighted, you have various groups that serve as civil society organizations. You have those who are mostly on service delivery. They would focus on healthcare, they would focus on education, they will be working with the elderly. These are not mainstream advocacy, so they are doing those things. You have those like us who we're not in service delivery, but we are dealing with strategic policy and doing bottom-top approach in our advocacy. You work in the communities, you engage the groups there, you engage vulnerable groups, and you bring their issue to the attention of the government, the policymakers. Similarly, we help to shape policies. So you'll find that a good number of us are part and parcel of some of the committees or groups that the government establishes so that we can bring out on the table and have a discussion that considers vulnerable groups, people in the rural area, poor people, people in need. We're not a welfare state, but there's so much need. And we bring that to the table so that when these policies are being formulated, the needs and the aspirations of these groups of people are heard. So that's the role we play. And I don't think there's a blanket corruption. Like I said, you'll have one or two rotten eggs. Definitely, we cannot shy away from that. But we cannot say we are ineffective. We are still doing our job. And we still have the passion, because it's not just about money, it's about passion. For us to leave our homes on a Sunday evening to be participating in this forum, it's a passion. There are different things we'll be doing at this time. We go to several meetings, even when they say, oh, civil society, you travel a lot. We know the risk of traveling, but that's where we network. We hear others, what success stories have happened in other countries with other colleagues. We hear some of the challenges they have, and we see how we can shape ours so that we can ensure that we have a proper democratic state. So the blanket corruption, the blanket ineffectiveness does not apply to the civil society organizations. We are working very hard under the circumstances.
Thank you very much indeed, Valnoa. Let me come back to you, Alphonsus. Now, it took an international media the Middle Eastern broadcaster Al Jazeera to spot a notorious drug lord cowering in Sierra Leone and his trail of activities, if you like, which also reveled around the first family. Why is it that you didn't come out before now? We've not heard much from the civil society in Sierra Leone with all of the myriad of drug scandals.
You know, we also have to understand the work of civil society. Some of us, for me in particular, have not even seen the gentleman. I've just been reading this thing on social media. And we have to look at what is the conduct of the governance, what is human rights, and what is maybe somebody's privacy. Now, if for obvious reason it is confirmed that the alleged wanted person, the drug baron, wanted by the Dutch government, is with the first family in this country, that is unfortunate. And we believe if that was the case, the government and the office of the president has all reasonable reason to make a statement dissociating themselves. We should not be going out there talking for and on behalf of the government or trying to, you need to get the facts. Our work is like people going out, like lawyers going out in court. You have to get the facts, you have to get the issues before you go out. Some of us are not met with the gentleman. What we are saying, these are secondary information.
Well, the Ministry of Information published a press release, and in it, they said that they didn't know whom the guy was. They claimed that, you know, the president did take a lot of pictures during the holidays, but could not know indeed who the gentleman was. But there are other pictures which have, emerged of recent.
You know, look, the statement from the minister could be misleading. I will not talk about the pictures that they took when the president was in church or whosoever with him at any club. But if you look at the picture where they were harvesting, that is beyond reasonable cause for any reasonable person to say the president is not aware of the presence of that gentleman. Because for all obvious reasons, that gentleman must have gone through security protocols. Even some of us in Sierra Leone who are citizens, when you are even called to State House, even though it's a State House that invited you to go there, we know the process we also go through just to reach out there and get a meeting with the president, even though he was the person who invited you. So for somebody who has been designated as a drug gangster and a wanted person to be amongst the first family, that is really serious and it's misleading. It does not send a very good signal. And I think the office of the president need to make a statement dissociating themselves and explain to the people of this country on which basis the gentleman was around.
Abdul, how can the civil society in Sierra Leone help in this instance? What can you do in a situation like this?
Yeah, thanks. Before I respond to your immediate question, I go back to the one you posed to my colleague, which I think that is totally unfair to civil society again. And we are civil society. You, the media, should have been at the front. It was the media outlet that broke that news, and it should be a shame as well to the media than to civil society, because it was the international media that broke that news. So is it that they don't trust Sierra Leonean media to work in partnership with them to broke it? And we are more concerned about the breakdown in governance, and structures in this country. And based on the breakdown, the breakdown of governance architecture in this country, that has led us to serious security implication. And the discussion is a very serious one on national security. And if we have somebody who is wanted, as alleged by the media, the international media, is wanted in Europe. And the unfortunate thing for this is that we didn't get any confirmation from the Dutch government that they have done a formal request And the Inspector General of Police said that throughout his tenure as an Inspector General of Police, he has not received any red alert, right? But if indeed this guy was declared in Europe, he doesn't need to actually receive any red alert. If indeed this young man who has been alleged, he is in Sierra Leone, they don't need a red alert. And this brings a conflict of giving the citizens the right information surrounding this entire, unfortunate situation against our country. And the worry side of it, that what is going on at the immigration, that's one of the biggest points, because this is a foreigner. How did he enter into Sierra Leone? What route? So, is our border point safe? These are the questions. And the next one is that, in as much as people have their right to privacy guaranteed by the Constitution of this country, but the first gentleman of this country is not somebody that anyone can just walk up and match to him. Even his family members, they have to be profiled through security means to know if they have not been compromised. Because whatever happened with our president of this nation, it's a national disaster. So with that, most of our resources, most advanced countries, they put money heavily around the security of the prime minister or the president. So for us to have that breakdown in our national security, it should be a worry concern to us. And this should not be the point where civil society and the media start blaming, or citizens start blaming the non-state actors why they fail. Don't take that from the politicians. These are the politicians who want to think that you and I, you from the media, I from the civil society, our eyes should be all over without their financial contribution for our institutions to survive. If you look how many people are paid here, some of your colleagues in Kenya, they had more than 6,000. Those who anchor a program. But you cannot even have somebody who anchor a program in Sierra Leone for $500. But the same public want you to do your best. But ask them when last they donate. The same politicians, because of their ineffectiveness to hold government to accountable, they will go to the international community members in Sierra Leone or other institutions and blackmail civil society and the media. But then when they are in power, they need the role of the media or the role of the civil society, they come back. Like some of us, the moment I know the pattern of these people, I say it on their face. You cannot really damage my reputation, and then tomorrow you want to work with me in collaboration. It's totally unacceptable. So now, after the war, as a country, we have invested, and other countries have invested seriously into our law enforcement efforts. To a point, the IG and other security sector boast of saying that Freetown is now on camera. Do we have another CCTV footage of this guy entering into Freetown? If Freetown is on camera. So these are the significant questions the media, the civil society, the populace need to ask the authorities. Than politicians who have failed to hold government accountable want to draw civil society and the media at the midst of a mess that they have helped to create in this country. So we should reject that very strongly and focus on our role. Look, civil society are playing a pivotal role in this country, like Vanora said. We have civil society organizations campaigning on climate change issues. These are good causes. We have civil society organizations that are promoting right to education in this country. These are good causes. We have civil society organizations promoting government effort in feed salon, in free healthcare related issues. We have trade union organizations helping government to really achieve the waka fine. This has not been recognized. They only look at one sector of civil society and cover all. The sector is the advocacy wing of civil society. Because we bring issues up that make government very much uncomfortable or politicians very much uncomfortable, the next thing is that we have become an antagonist to them. We are enemy of the state that use civil society. We have other civil society playing a greater role. The thing is that civil society concept is new in continent like Africa. Because 30 years ago, we were more having union. Then we start moving forward. When the United Nations gave a definition of NGO, meaning non-governmental, that for the West, they hold on that NGO concept. But when it comes to Africa and Asia, you have the CSO, the civil society organization, which makes the same meaning because they are not part of governance. So the advocacy side has become a huge, enemy towards the state, like Amnesty International, Transparency International. Locally, you can talk about Campaign for Human Rights and Development International, Human Rights Defenders Network, CGG, and others. Some politicians are just uncomfortable with the work of this organization because at that time they are in power. Their advocacy really put them in a very uncomfortable position. They will look at your tribe and say, "Namende my organization." They look at that and then create picking and they look at that. Oh, then timini bobode and then timini titide. So they categorize that. But the day they are out of power, you talk good thing. You're not the only one now where they try for win at this country. So, like for me, I don't fall for those cheap things.
Let me hear from Valnora. Before I do so, so I'm not making a case for the media actually. So when Al Jazeera published the story, they said they used an advanced facial recognition software to have picked out indeed that this particular drug lord had been carrying in Sierra Leone. And no sooner the news broke out than the AYV actually published it on its online platform and also on Primetime News at 9. And we're also dealing with it today here on AYV on Sunday. But I would like to hear from Valnora just for a minute or so. What are your views wrapping this issue up this evening regarding this? Now, your colleagues have said it's a matter of security problem in the country. And even the president is not safe if indeed this particular man is carrying here. What are your views? And what do you think civil society should do in this instance?
That's interesting. I think we're firstly concerned about the recent allegations of Sierra Leone being involved in, a number of issues on drug trafficking and the like. And I think it's something the government needs to take very seriously. And as civil society organizations, we're also taking it seriously because it would be rather unfortunate with all the efforts that have been made to ensure that we move away from being considered a conflict-prone country to now being considered a narco state. So we are hopeful that sooner than later, the respective institutions can do due diligence and ensure that the name, the image of Sierra Leone, because some of us represent Sierra Leone in various forms, and it gets very embarrassing when you are in a certain space and these conversations emerge. So they need to step up so that we can get some clear information about what's going on. And certainly we do want to agree that based on this allegation about this particular individual, that it would be rather unfortunate, again, as have been said, how did he get into Sierra Leone and how did he get so close to the first family if he is the one, as alleged, and with the reputation that he has. So it really raises the question, what is really going on? And true, some of us are around, and so even you're in a space and you want to say hi to the president, there's so much security here and there, and they know who we are. and then for somebody from somewhere else being so close to him, it's worrying as well. So we're raising it now. We're raising it now, and we are hopeful that the security sector will be able to share with the public, because they do have a responsibility to let us know what exactly is going on, how safe we are as a people, how safe the first family is, and to ensure that the image of Sierra Leone is secure, that we do not move from being considered a post-conflict country to being considered a narco state. So it's a worrying trend, and we just have to see because we cannot do that sort of investigation. We follow what the media has to say, and then we're relying on the security sector to actually tell us what the actual fact is. It's not something that we can hide. And it's true, it's unfortunate that internally, we were not, what would you say, we were oblivious to what was going on. And it had to be an international media institution that had to bring that to the fore. So it also means all of us needs to wake up. We cannot shy away from that. We all need to wake up to understand that we all represent Sierra Leone in one form or the other. And these happenings have a tendency to taint even the work we do as civil society organizations. So it's a wake-up call, not only for the government, but even for us as CSOs, so that we can be a bit more alert.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Valnora, you wanted to, Alphonsus, wanted to respond to something?
Yeah, I wanted to say something because, when President Madabio was campaigning, and even when he won the election, he has 3 key words that I personally, and even our institution, fall into and decided even to ensure that his government succeeds. That is that his government is going to fight lawlessness, indiscipline, and corruption. These are 3 critical things that are affecting the growth, the peace and national cohesion in this country. If his office could accommodate such a person in this country, it's a complete betrayal to his own words.
Don't you think the president would have been lied to, even?
I'm not. We need to be sincere. The president, whether he has been lied to or whatsoever, he has to own up. Because as a president, even me, for our own job, we are also doing a lot of security training, whether physical and digital. Somebody that I've never known sent an information to me that he wants to engage me. Believe me, before even confirming with that person, I do due diligence to do a chat to know who is this person, who is this organization, what this organization is doing, before I could even confirm that yes, I'm available, we can talk. So for somebody, an outsider, not even the Sierra Leonean, to be very close to the president, the security must have done their own bit to inform the president. The president has to own up, and they have to come out with a precise statement.
Right.
Either they have to dissociate themselves from the gentleman to say, okay, to cool the temperature down, please, if the Dutch government want this person is a wanted person, let them declare this person and hand over that person to the Dutch government. That will save the office of the president. Otherwise, I think it's a disgrace to the nation.
Recently again, the voting out of office of the former Auditor General Taylor Pierce and her deputy Tamba Momo sparked deep resentment and disgust among many. I'm sure you've been following. Now, one of them who actually spoke out in public was Sori Sengbe Mara, who tweeted on behalf of Lawyer Society on X, saying, I quote, "The apparent haste to remove the Auditor General without ensuring the necessary procedural propriety is deeply concerning. The Society is particularly troubled by the implications of this decision for the independence of offices designed to check executive power." You think civil society community could have been more robust in this issue, in its advocacy for or not for or against these people who had been, sort of removed or voted out of office now?
We did a lot, civil society, on the issue of the Auditor General. Some of us, if I go back into my archives, you will see some of the statements, the press statement we published.
But not all of you.
Well, it will not. It doesn't necessarily to say everybody. For the mere fact that people, a group of civil society organizations are expressing concern and taking that issue up, it serves the purpose. It serves the purpose because we are concerned. And it's unfortunate that a situation of this nature happened. And that's why sometimes I keep telling politicians that the only people in the country that can do revenge or express anger are the voters. When you win, you contest an election and you won, your priority is national cohesion and development. There is nothing about revenge. And so what the current ruling party have done is to demonstrate a certain amount of anger or revenge against a state institution. For all obvious reasons, an international body that is in charge of auditing globally have done their own investigation, and they have presented the report suggesting that the audit service, the Auditor General herself and her deputy, did not go beyond the mandate of their own work. What else I think the government could have done? The whole thing is about ego, it's about showing that we have the power, we can kick you out. But that's the bad precedent. And these two political parties, with all due respect, they have set bad precedents in this country. The APC have set a bad precedent by the former president to sack his vice president. Madabio has set a bad precedent by removing the Auditor General from office. That is a bad precedent. And it's not good for our democracy. It's not good for development. It's not good because if the president said he's going to fight lawlessness, corruption, and indiscipline, the work of the Auditor General is to address the issue of corruption, maladministration, and mismanagement of state resources or whatsoever. So he could have been the first person to support and protect the office of the Auditor General. Even if, let's assume, even for God's sake, that there could be some errors or mistakes, for that matter, for the mere fact that you campaign on fighting against corruption, lawlessness, and indiscipline, you could have been the first person to protect that institution. Doing the contrary is a shame and a disgrace to this nation.
Abdul, what are your views? You've heard from sponsors regarding this matter. And
my view go back to your question in the generality form. We had civil society, like Alfonso said, that did a lot around that. And even the Lawyer Society is a civil society organization. Every organization that is not part of government is a civil society. So that is what we need to understand. So it doesn't mean that we need to have, I don't even have a statistics, not government, that have a full statistics about how many civil society organizations we have in this country. So even one civil society popping up, you cannot categorically say there was no civil society voice. You may not recognize that civil society, but give them their due. They might not be the traditional name among the civil society. Coming back to this, our politicians in this country have taken advantage over the weak structure of our 1991 Constitution. If you are talking about fairness, the office of the president was accused in an audit report. And the same office of the president has the power through constitutional means to establish a tribunal to look into the behavior of the individual who accused the office of the president. And then when the work of that tribunal finish, according to law, they would then present again this report to the same person who his office or her office has been accused. And what happened next? They will take this document to another arm of government again, that this office that has been accused, according to law, have another huge influence. When the president goes to parliament, the speaker will vacate his seat. And so the president will sit in that seat, according to the constitution of this country. So when we wake and sleep with a one-party constitutional instrument, provisions in this constitution, these are the results we see, in as much as it's against democratic principles. But this is what binds us as a country. And you cannot say civil society tomorrow again, that civil society has not been. We have been drumming this. And the Truth and Reconciliation report, the recommendation, has been drumming this again. And we launched a campaign 3 years ago again for the government to look into the constitutional review process. The only sanctuary for the 1991 Constitution is the Part 3, Chapter 3. Yes. That's where you have democracy and human rights. And even the side of human rights, our human freedom is curtailed by a secondary act of this country, the 1965 Act or the Police Act. They take precedent according to them. That's what they do to us. But in the real sense, they'll come with things on Public Order Act. They'll come with things on, procession. But the Constitution guarantees you for your freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, and freedom of association. But then you have a secondary law that the law enforcement will use against you. So the weakness of the provisions in our Constitution is what fighting us. So we as a country, we need, if we want democracy, and we mean democracy, we should stand up and demand from this bio-led administration that enough is enough. We need a constitution that speaks for us. Not this 1991 Constitution that is against us. We have been crying and we continue to cry. It's now time for us to unify and ask the government, please do us a favor. Give us a constitution that protects us, that promotes our right. We want to enjoy our democratic right.
As Chadi, did you put out any form of resolution regarding the issue?
We have been condemning the processes, but we have not put out any statement. But we engage the both parties, we listen to both parties. But like I said, based on the weak provisions in our national law, like the Constitution, it's given a politician, a fee day to operate legally, but illegally in democratic, in real democratic practice. So that is the concern. It's a worry concern that we have these loopholes in our laws that enhance the office of the president with so much, executive power, like a one-party country. I mean, Chroma enjoy that, BO is enjoying that. Who is on the line to enjoy such? So now is the time. Since BO ensured that he campaigned to the people of this country, that when he took office, he would pass the Constitution, the work of late Justice Kawan, recommendation for us to have a new Constitution. He didn't do that for us in his first term. Promise upon promise, and then we run into COVID. And now we are up in his second term. Time is running. By next year, we'll start talking about election, then even referendum, and also a major change in the Constitution. So now what we have is secrecy within government, even without the media and the civil society, sitting on that panel, that secret panel of the review process. Yeah. And the ineffectiveness of opposition parties in this country. You are not seeing their position clearly on this. But when times come for election, that time you will realize that we have up to 17 registered political parties in this country. But now, you cannot even find them or see them in any of their offices.
Let me hear. Do you want to respond briefly before I go to Valnora?
Yeah, no, go. I will give my. Let me give her the chance.
Let me hear from you, Valnora. So we are now discussing the 1991 Constitution and the enormous powers that the president, wields. Do you think this particular constitution is also a deterrent to the work of civil society in Sierra Leone? Does it in any way pose threat to the work you do?
I always love talking about the 1991 Constitution because I was part of the Justice Cowan Committee. I was in the Human Rights Subcommittee, and we were looking at all these provisions. And I think it's very unfortunate that though a lot of resources, time, energy were put into that task, today we are still discussing about whether or not we're going to have a referendum. And these are some of the challenging issues we face as civil society, where, politicians sometimes don't look ahead. They don't think about the nation, say 10, 15 years, what would we like to see? They're only thinking about now and how they have consolidated their space. So when we talk about the powers of the presidency, that was one of the key discussions we had about how you can have other independent bodies in terms of appointments, or you can ensure that certain offices, to bring out that level of professionalism, have a secured tenure of office, so that when one government comes in, they are not changed and somebody else is brought in. But some offices, it's best that they have security of tenure to bring out the professionalism and that level of continuity that you need in any institution. So now we know that they are having a discussion around the Constitution. Again, civil society is not there. You do not actually know what's going on. And we do not know whether there will be additional provisions put into that document that was not there originally and for which consultations have not been held. So it's also a concern. The way the Constitution is does not necessarily affect how we operate because we have freedom of association. The only area is what you started with, the issue of if individuals or groups need to do a protest, whether the police would allow that to happen, and that's been going on for several years now. The previous government, there was the same challenge. The current government, there is the same challenge. As to the police would say it's not a safe environment, they're concerned about security. And our argument has always been, why don't you secure the people who want to do the protests? They'll give their names, they'll tell you how many people, you can advise on route, time, day, but you allow them to do their thing. Obviously, we're not condoning violence, we're not condoning abusive behavior, destruction of property or a threat to life. But we're saying if 10 people, 20 people are concerned about maybe EDSA, fluctuation of light, or maybe the cost of goods in the markets, in the shops, I think they should be allowed to air out their views peacefully, as long as we can determine that it's peaceful and you protect them so that those who you are not certain that might want to infiltrate to create problems, you can safeguard that group to ensure they do their thing. If it's a ministry they want to go or a place they want to hand out a letter, they do it peacefully, you give them 1 hour, 2 hours, and that's over and done with. So these were some of the issues we were even discussing when we were doing the constitutional review. And as my colleague has said, to date, we don't know what's happening to it. We don't know what's going to be added or whether other things are going to be removed. And I think it's unfortunate that even if new things are to be added in, maybe at the time since 2016 to date, time has elapsed, there might be some new issue that might not have been included. It warrants another discussion so that citizens can be aware. Citizens can give their views because the Constitution is for us. It's not for a particular group of people. It's there to stand the test of time. We would not make the same mistakes that we made for the 1991 Constitution, which might not even be a mistake. It was appropriate at that time. Time has elapsed. it needs to meet the context that we're in. Now the debate needs to open up so that we can add our voice, we can know what's going on, because the Constitution is for us, for all of us. So we are hopeful that sooner than later, we'll be able to get to that point where we can see what the content is, and as citizens will be able to decide that this Constitution should last for the next 20, 30 years without us thinking that it needs to be changed.
All right. Yes, you want to respond?
What I wanted to say is that President Bio has a huge opportunity, very huge opportunity. I could remember when we met with a former president in his office when they arrested Adamuze in Kono, and he was detained at Hastings. We met with him in the office to plead, to tell him that they should release him. And he turned and said to us, gentlemen, you are now crying. The powers the Constitution have given me, I have not even used 1/10 of it, and you are now shouting. That tells you the powers the Constitution have given to President. But President Bio has huge opportunity. One, he was once a head of state, so he knows how state functions. Two, he has fought the war in this country, so he knows the impacts that war will create in society. Three, he has a vice president that has been in the civil society sector, and now he's now serving him, who can also advise him the role that civil society plays in nation building. And so with all that, he has started in a better way, repealing the death penalty, abolishing the death penalty, repealing part 5 of the Public Order Act, even though we still have part 3, we deal with possession in the Public Order Act, and that document was also introduced by SLPP. So if the document that was introduced by late Albert Magai on the SLPP regime, we now see an SLPP person removing it from the statute book, it's an opportunity for Madabio. So I said it still has an opportunity. This constitution we are discussing now, Chidan Kaba did something. Former President Nkrumah established the Constitutional Review Committee. They come out to this document. So he has all opportunity to transform this country so that we move together and live in peace.
Do you think it's an opportunity he will take?
I think he should take it. And one last thing I want to mention in this thing, on the area that people are saying that we are not doing our job. Let me tell you, one critical thing that happened at the time when Madabio took over office. You know, his first action was to dissolve all boards, including the Human Rights Commission. At that time he did that. Gangway wrote a letter to this government, even when they selected these current commissioners, that if the Parliament, they wrote a letter to Parliament that if Parliament go ahead to approve the appointment of those commissioners, they will withdraw the grade A status. It was the Human Rights Defenders Network that wrote a letter to Gangway. I met with Gangway staff in Geneva discussing the issue with them that led Gangway not to even interfere with that. I told them, look, allow the commissioners to go ahead, judge the country, judge them, decide whether they deserve to get the grade A status based on their conduct and performance when they attain office. So that tells you that we are doing something behind the scene, even for the country and for the government. We don't need to go out and shout about it. But yet still, government still sees us as enemies. And we are not enemies, we are partners in development.
Let me hear from Abdul. Your thoughts around all of this. Because, again, if you look at the Constitution, Section 48 gives enormous power to the people as well. You know, you can even sue the president. Why have you not been taking opportunity of this, sacred law?
Well, probably if you read the very Constitution that gives you that provisions, it takes away that from you. That the sitting president is immune from prosecution, right? And so what are you going to do when he left office? Yes, and you saw argument from for Nkrumah when he was alleged involving in treason-related activities in this country. His lawyers were arguing that he holds an immunity because he's a former head of state, right? And then the court toned that down. So probably we may do that, but now, look, even when our organization took the issue of judicial administration to the civil division of the High Court, and for them to do for us to do a judicial review on the process, since April, disgracefully, since April last year, that matter is still stuck. So when we give people appetite for litigation, it's painful to do litigation in this country. It's painful and disgraceful. And we talked around, you know, access to justice. Come on, don't give me that crap.
You think there's no justice in Sierra Leone?
I mean, the issue of access to justice is a challenging thing and painful thing for the people of this country. And you see, most people are not interested in litigation in this country. Maybe that's the reason why the judiciary is ashamed to actually provide us a statistics, because most of their people who speak for that judiciary on different programs, 3 of them, have been given the media like you different figures. So now, Campaign for Human Rights wanted a clear official statistics that maybe media can reference to and civil society can reference to. They're afraid of providing that to the public. I don't know. I mean, what's the problem? So we want to know how many cases are assigned to one judge or one magistrate. And there was a time, you know, close to 96 cases assigned to one judge for just a month or 2. That's ridiculous. Criminal files. So we actually want to know some of these things. But then when you actually take a look at the 1991 Constitution and go back to the 1978 Constitution, by then we were a Republican state, a one party. So all of the executive powers was confined in one man. And since that time, we rushed to get the 1991, you know, Momo was in a rush. And then, you know, that was the shortest engagement around Constitution. In the late 1990, within 6 months, we have a Constitution in 1991. So now, we have the opportunity for us to get a more robust and a strong constitutions that really protect the people of this country, that brings in the social and economic development we're yearning for. Because countries don't want to invest in, businesses don't want to invest in countries that don't have a strong legislations. So when you have a weak legislations, it actually shy investors to come in to invest their money. And it creates a whole, you know, a chilly environment, even for media to strive, even for civil society. We still have laws, like they just look in us, like they're not seeing us. We still have laws that can implicate us. Okay. You know, based on the advocacy work that we are doing, or even the media work that you are doing. Had it not been also civil society, our organization, right, criticized the provisions that government wanted to bring earlier on the Cybersecurity and Crimes Act now, our organization with several other civil society organizations put in their own, they bring in their own input. Yeah. And people say we're not doing things. I mean, like for us, we have influenced a lot of laws in this country and a lot of policy. And we will continue to do that as civil society group. And we'll continue to hold government accountable. But when you look at the breakdown of the governance system in this country, okay, has helped to create help feed on the corruption. Yes, according to all the statistics, we are making gain. But then we are seeing people who in government, we knew them before, we are Israeli, either we live abroad or we are Israeli, who we are not having a bicycle. Yeah. And now they have fleets of cars, maybe one will worth 35 or 45,000 US. And these are people who will say to you or their family members, my salary is below $2,000. And within 12 months or 36 months, you can boast of building a big house with swimming pool. That's not the new pattern in Sierra Leone. And have fleets of cars, right? But what is happening? But then when you actually look around the ethics of corruption, and you look how institutions that are mandated by law to strengthen the fight against corruption, the way they receive funding from the consolidated fund, that helps to undermine their work effectively. Right. The audit service, they're not doing their work properly. They're doing a very selective work. because there is no resources to even cover our missions outside of Sierra Leone. So tell me, audit after audit, if actually we have all our agencies listed for one audit report. I've never seen that. I've read through our country audit report. And so you ask, are we serious towards this fight against corruption?
All right. Fatoma, thank you so much indeed. You're watching AIV on Sunday here on the Africa Young Voices Media Empire. My name is Victor Jones with you this evening. Now, the AIV team has been out in the streets of Freetown sourcing the views of people regarding the work that civil society advocates do in Sierra Leone. This is what they had to say.
I want to look at and say the civil society there have for war in the country. But the civil society there, when they look at say they do two-face. Like I say, they do for the government, like I say, they do for the masses. But we, general perspective, when we look at them, may God help we, may God save we at this country. May God make things change for we. The civil society, they not come for help we. Because now they own rights, voluntary, now they own rights for talk. What the government they do, the people, the masses. Say this is bad or this is wrong. And except the government, they hold the ransom, they put it in a neighborhood, so long as the right thing that they say for the people there. Now saloon, you go find for the people there, the masses there, they heart they cold. But the civil society there, they're dormant. They need to talk nothing. Tell like I said they work. The government they put something in their pockets. They not able to do nothing. They just fall foot from since this government work inside. But the past governments there, them they talk they all there, they threats there, they left them. But the government work inside now, they need to talk nothing. They just dormant. Who they take us say they do there something in their pockets or that brown envelope.
Please, we want to put more emphasis on the civil society workers then at the country. Let them put efforts for we at the country. Let them do their job perfectly. Let them look up to the foreigners the way they come at this country and the one the way they go out. Let them know how they do their job for we. Because we get beaucoup foreigners then at this country, we not get documents safe. The civil society then they are big. Me a citizen of this country. Me a born soil of Sierra Leone. They are big. Work for we perfectly. Let us put more efforts for the job. Let the job be well done. Let it not be undone, please.
The civil society them we will get in the country. You know, sometimes they can do a good job, but since when this government can empower, you know, they need to give the civil society then access or make them talk exactly and do the exactly job we see them for do. Because at the end of the day, the civil society then they for advocate for we and for talk for we and put things there in place towards the government side. But this being 10, the civil society not get any better work in the work because some man they afraid say if you can't say this or they can't talk this, for them they go put it up on them.
All right, welcome back to AIV on Sunday. You've been hearing from renowned civil rights activist Alphonsus Bani. He is Executive Secretary, Human Rights Defenders Network, and also Abdul Fatoma, Chief Executive Chadi. On Zoom, I have with me Valnora Edwin. She's Chairperson, African Women Leaders Network. And we've been discussing the state of advocacy of human rights defenders, should I say, in Sierra Leone. So, Alphonsus, let me start with you first. You've heard from what the, well, should I say, the Vox Pops suggest. What are your views? Briefly.
I will not, in the first place, if you try to ask from which locations you conducted to the Vox Pop, then you will start to say, I understand the reason why they are suggesting this type of things. But really, when people, you know, many times citizens see the civil society as an alternative to political parties. When political parties have their own role, we have our own role. The opposition parties have their own distinct role to play in society to check the government. And we cannot replace state institutions. We cannot replace opposition party. We cannot replace political parties. We are complementing their efforts in ensuring that people enjoy their fundamental rights and freedoms in this country. And so I do understand the frustration some of our colleagues do have, that, you know, when you don't understand the role of an institution, you will mistakenly be placing the burden of what is happening in the society as the responsibility of that particular institution. And that's what we are experiencing now. When we are fighting, even for 4 days and when we took to the streets, people were not calling us at that time the Bintu Mani 1, Bintu Mani 2 that brought democracy. People were not referring to us as evil society. Today, these same people that are suggesting that we are not doing enough, they are now referring to us as evil society, forgetting what we have done, the lives, people that lost their lives on that fateful day in this country that brought democracy. I suffered. I was among somebody that was shot dead, very close to me. So sometimes I felt it as if they are stabbing me, when even politicians are using that word as evil society. When we are marching up in the street, they were lying down, enjoying their sleep in their homes, when our colleagues were killed on that fateful day. And so we are doing a lot, but it's our work. It's not recognized by society because we are not delivering to them. Because our advocacy, they will see the government like, let's say the repeal, the abolition of the death penalty. Do you know how many years civil society have been campaigning for the abolition of the death penalty? Now when Madabio abolished it, the praise goes to Madabio. Nobody knows about the work of civil society. Now it is Madabio. So it tells you that because of advocacy, something that is not tangible, people don't see our effort. They will see what is tangible.
Let me bring in Valnora. You've been listening. So what are your views generally? You've heard the Vox Pop. Are you in disagreement, just like Afonso's?
It's interesting. I've been in this space for the last 25 years, and I even met Alfonso in this space. And over time, we heard the same thing, that we're disappointed at civil society. They're not saying much. They're not doing A, they're not doing B. And always on one side, oh, there were another SLPP CSOs, or hey, there were another APC CSOs. So we've had that, over a period of time. However, I believe that if the people we want to serve, some of them have that perception, it calls for maybe some internal reflection to understand where are they coming from. What is there really a lapse? Is there something else we need to consider? I would like to say, I wouldn't say since this government came into office that civil society has been quiet, as the way they put it. Personally, for myself, the work I do now is not so much on advocacy. I mean, like media engagement. What I do, and that's why we explain the different things that civil society organizations do. We have the Jury Act, we have the Public Elections Act, we have the National Land Commission Act that is gender responsive. So on the side, we are trying to see how do you ensure that these provisions are actually implemented so that the least woman in the most remote part of Sierra Leone, firstly, is aware, and secondly, can have somewhere that can secure that right. Institutions or mechanisms are in place to ensure that that right is exercised. These are the things we do. So you don't necessarily have to come to the media to do that sort of work. So if there are some phases or some individuals you don't see on the media, it doesn't mean that they're not doing their job, or it doesn't mean that it's because of a particular government that you no longer see them. And as my colleague was saying, I mean, the two colleagues there, we do a lot of things behind the scenes. And as I've said, we belong to quite a number of committees, entities, where our voices are heard, where we negotiate, we compromise, we ask for compromise, because that's the role of CSOs, to ensure there's high level of tolerance, to ensure that you bring in debates, hear different voices. There are places we go, government capacity is limited, we support them. So for example, for the voluntary national review, CSOs do that, and we work with the government on that. We do the consultations, we write a report, we give it to them on the progress of SDGs, bringing together the common people, women, youth, religious leaders, traditional leaders. What are your views about implementation of maybe SDG 5 that deals with gender equality, on education or water, according to the SDGs? and we do a report and we give it to the Ministry of Planning. So CSOs are still doing their job. If they are not on the media, it doesn't mean they are not doing their job. But probably it requires that there has to be a bit more conversation about some of the things that are happening. Maybe the people are of the view that there needs to be more intense engagement by CSO groups. And I know when you did mention about the Auditor General, I think even on AYV, Budget Advocacy Network, had been on that media, on AYV several times throughout the trial, even on other media houses. And there have been other colleagues who did press releases. There were so many engagements to say, I don't think this is best practice. We'll be setting a bad precedent if we go down this route. So civil society is doing their job. We unfortunately cannot probably satisfy everyone. And like I said, it's something we've had over time, but it doesn't mean that we're not doing our job.
All right, thank you very much, Valora. If you're watching us or listening to us on radio on 101.7, you can now drop your comments through text messages on our phone line 088-186-066. The text line this evening is 088-186-066. Send those thoughts coming in. You can also do so by dropping them on our Facebook page, AYV News, and we'll ensure to read them before the program ends. Another thing I would like to engage you gentlemen this evening on, a lot of people seem to be suggesting that much of the advocacy in Sierra Leone revolves around, press releases and texts online. It doesn't go beyond the normal press releases that, your organizations tender when there are national problems, or poor in the country, or when there are transgressions on human rights, and all of these things. Why? You can.
Right. Can I come in? Let me just go first to the citizens.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a concern, that you have both educated and non-educated, with no disrespect here, that actually don't know the role of civil society. The three people that really talked on civil society issue, they have no knowledge. We are not law enforcement. We cannot be at the borders of Sierra Leone to know who is coming in and who is going out, right? And when we pick up one issue, we develop over 100 enemies. We pick up one issue, we develop over 100 enemies. When we receive death threat and our family member, the gentleman is saying that we should not be worried when we're arrested and get to Panama Road. And he doesn't even know some of the stress our parents, our children, our family members go through when they hear the news that we have been arrested. I've been arrested in this country. I've been detained in this country. I've received multiple death threats in this country. But I work still around the city and outside of the city without security. And none of them there ever confessed that out of their businesses, they have contributed to the work of civil society, just even their own locality. And they're wishing for someone's father, for someone's son or daughter to go to prison, just to ensure that they hear that that individual did something very well for them. And how fair are you? You want people to be fair with you, then you don't want to be fair. Back to your question, that's not true. Because our advocacy now, we are in court. That's what we call public interest litigation, strategic litigation. So meaning, we don't only want to do a press releases, we don't only want to do press conference, but these are our own working tools. So either someone like it or not, we're going to use them. These are our own tools, right? So, but we have another option to go to the court. But when you look around the way system operates in this country, either be APC or SLPP, they don't want to say it or accept it, but this is a fact. When SLPP is in power, there are critical cases against the SLPP administration. Judges or magistrates will compromise. Anything that say, you're not going to make name power, you can't disgrace me. Now we get the way to say. So sometimes they just keep the case to sleep. You can imagine, in other jurisdictions, this is like maybe 2 months at least, a judicial review. Because this is a paper-based legislation. Litigation practice. So, from April, this is February. What will encourage Alfonso to do judicial review? And you want him to move from press release, text on social media, and also advocacy through radio and television. Alfonso wants to be motivated by organizations that already have done strategic litigation. But then if the democratic institutions that are set up to actually protect the rights of citizens, and these institutions are failing, we should come together and really hold them to accountable. We need to be sending a strong message to government. Listen, work within our organization, we work within the law. We are not afraid to hold any office in this country to account. We have done that. We did that with Parliament, we did that with the Judiciary, we did that with the Office of the President, the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Sierra Leone Police, the Sierra Leone Military, and people are still saying we are not doing anything. If you ask these institutions that I've named, they know that we keep them on their toes. Very recently, we want the judiciary, the judges, to conduct themselves into a judicial-like manner, for them to respect ethics. You cannot go to the office of the Chief Justice and consume alcohol. We discussed that on AYV here and other media platform.
Have they been drinking alcohol in the offices?
Yeah, the video was out. Some of your colleagues hosted us, DJ Bass and others. We discussed about that. It was all over. And now, guess what? Some of them, even when they have beer somewhere, they say, "Let Abdul Fatoma no see we because you go post and just no." It helps to bring sanity, right? And people were all against me. That why are you doing this? They need to enjoy their life. Yes, it is true. I'm not against them enjoying their life, but you cannot go to your office and pop, alcohol and start drinking it. We hold the judges accountable on that, the judiciary accountable. But you have people who have no clue about what accountability means. They say that they give them brown envelope. You think someone will be giving me brown envelope, and I sit here and really criticize them very hardly and harshly. These are my own people. From the majority of them were from the similar district, same district. We talk similar local language. Some of them we attended the same school. Even some were senior, but we belong to the same old boys. But ask people about my relationship with them. It's not that cool because of my stand in public on what our organization believes in. And you know, for some of them, we dare not sacrifice those opportunities. There are people in this country clamoring, wishing for such opportunity. And some of us, based on work ethics and professionalism, we kick those things out to ensure that we stand true to the work that we are doing. And we still have people who think that they have no reason to appreciate us, but we accept them for who they are.
Just to add to what Abdul have just said, today people are enjoying radical inclusion, right? Because a civil society institution decided to take the government of Sierra Leone to the ECOWAS courts, and they passed a judgment against the government. That is why we are now seeing radical inclusion, allowing pregnant girls to even go to school and even take their exam. That is the work of civil society. The case of the late Paramount Chief of Bab Nongobabulon, who raped a young girl. That matter was taken to the ECOWAS court. There is judgment now. The government is yet to pay compensation of $10,000 to that young girl, and we are still following that up. These are things we are. It's not all the time. Sometimes you don't go on air. You don't go and make press release. You also look at, you evaluate, you try to look at what strategy or what action do you need to invest in a particular issue. You use it to ensure that you get a better outcome. So it's not only making press releases, demonstrations. We also even engage governments themselves. We meet with them, we discuss issues.
Valora, You've been following quite closely. You've heard from, Abdul, and you've also heard from Alphonsus. They seem to be saying that they've lost hope in the judiciary of Sierra Leone. They've catalogued a tsunami, if you like, of misconduct in the way they've put it this evening. Do you share similar views to these gentlemen in the studio this evening that the judiciary of Sierra Leone seem not to be serving the public interest in Sierra Leone?
The challenge of the judiciary didn't start today, and I think over time there's been a call that they need to be more independent. They need to administer justice, and I know we have the justice sector development project that was funded by DFID at that time, by the British government, to do reforms. And a number of civil society organizations have worked with them, maybe with support from UNDP and other donor partners internally and externally, in terms of showing that level of professionalism, how even having the special courts for sexual offenses and the like. But I think they're still yet to get to that point where they can be fully trusted, where they can be seen to be independent. I was recently engaging someone who was alleging that she had a matter regarding a property, a family property, and she was explaining all what she had to go through to ensure that after about 18 months, she was able to get a judgment, the amount of money she had to spend, how many times she had to be going to court, the way matters were adjourned, a bit of a confusion. So I do share the view that the judiciary certainly needs to step up a bit more. A lot of resources have been put into the judiciary in terms of reform. And I know they do have challenges with finances, like most state institutions, timely disbursement, etc. But I think it goes beyond that. And the general, not only the judiciary, but the general public sector, I think it's about the professionalism and ethics that we seem to have lost, creating that standard and understanding that you are there to deliver to the people. And despite the financial constraint, there is a way you can engage more effectively so that you can be trusted. Because over time, we've also discussed about trust in state institutions. And that's because of the sort of lack of efficiency and responsiveness to the people that they are there to serve. So definitely, they need to step up a bit more. We see some of the reforms they have made, but I think in terms of attitude, in terms of engagement, all across the country, there needs to be a bit more confidence. I do recall we usually talk about the Kenyan judicial system, for example. And there was an example even when they were close to the elections, that at around 4 p.m., civil society organizations were able to take a matter, and they would. Whilst in Sierra Leone, if you take a matter, first of all, maybe you might not even be able to take it to court at 4 p.m., and maybe it's a month later or 6 months later or a year after that the matter would be called up. So it's just about, the systems and processes within the judiciary that needs to be strengthened, that needs to ensure that it's there to serve the people all across the country. There are places, even outside Freetown, that they'll tell you, oh, they do have the magistrate, but they don't have a high court judge, and how long the court session takes. And some matters are not, that needs to be addressed, are not within the headquarter towns. They are in the villages. And so these people have to be going back and forth. So it erodes that level of trust and confidence that we have.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Valnora. Now, in 2020, 5 civilians were killed by security forces. Now, this was during a protest in McKinney. Despite the gravity, most civil society organizations were quite slow, to respond. Now, a lot of people argue on social media there was a barrage of comments, vexation and animosity surrounding the very issue about the death of these people. The question I would like to ask is, do you think in any way that the world of activism, has become a shelter sort of for cowards? Do you think a lot of civil society activists are afraid these days with the, well, draconian laws, you know, the judiciary and all these forms of litigation surrounding their work? You think they are afraid to do their work?
I would say no, but I just want to get clarification. Is it 2025 you are referring to about the deaths of 25 people in McKinney, or
5 civilians were killed by security forces? Or it was in 2020 actually.
Yeah, and so, you know, the issue of police brutality or excessive use of force by the Sierra Leone police, it has become a pattern. It is not only within the SLPP-led government, the two parties,
even the APC.
Yes, and I want to be very honest and apologies to other political parties. I'm not being maybe disingenuous to them, but the governance of this country, it's SLPP, APC, SLPP. So they have been running the mantle, and we are seeing time without numbers. Police officers are involved in excessive use of force. They have not been punished. Some of them are elevated, some of them are promoted, or they are transferred. I can give you scenarios. The incident that occurred at the beach area, where they said an OSD person shot dead a US Marine from the back. Yeah. I know that particular OSD. He was transferred, and in fact, he was sent to Kamakwie. The students' demonstration in Kabbalah, the officers were transferred from Kabbalah to another place. And the issue of the Anzaru killing, the two pupils, the police officer was also transferred. Even now, as we are speaking, the incidents that occurred in even May 8, 9, 10, or August 10, and recently, you don't see much. And even when the police complaint board do their investigation of the misconduct of senior police officers, they only stopped at investigating, compiling the report and presenting it to the Office of DPP for action. There has never been a situation where the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution have taken concrete action based on the findings of the Independent Police Complaint Board of their recommendations. No action has been taken based on their reports. So you also see why police are continuing to do the misconduct or using excessive use of force with impunity, because they have not been checked. And we always complain, and we also need to ask, when SLPP was in opposition, they have all the types of adjectives on the police. Lima it has the type of adjective. And when APC was in position, in governance, the Sierra Leone police were the best police in this country. When the baton changes, SLPP took over the mantle of governance. The police, Lima, was describing all type of adjective is the police I had. These are good police. We have, this is a force for good. The APC that were in governance, now they are in opposition, we have the worst police in this country. And so who is telling us the truth? So how are they taking the police? I know I have a number of relatives that are in the police force. I pity them. But to be candid enough, police are also going through a number of pressure. We have never seen a police that have disobeyed an unlawful order and sacrificed that. I will leave my job, but I will not carry out this order. That has never happened in the history of policing. So what we have in Sierra Leone is democratic policing. It is regime policing other than democratic policing. But we are doing our job. We are doing all it takes. And me seated here, August 8, 9, and 10 incidents. When I took to the street to monitor, even when I used my vehicle to carry a police officer, and that was the unfortunate side, they went out on operations. The guy choked himself with this tear gas canister. He almost died. They dropped him at Upgon Tontable, and they went on operation. There was no vehicle. I was there with my own vehicle. I had to take that police officer to rescue his life. Brought that police officer to Connaught. What happened the next time? A gentleman called Editor Temple and All People's Party Congress surrogate went out there publishing my name, pictures and whatsoever, that I gave my vehicle to the Sierra Leone police to be shooting and killing people randomly. I don't see the people that they kill on that fateful day. Nobody. I received a number of calls from people. Why did you do this? Nobody asked. And this is what that gentleman is saying. We have to sacrifice. We are doing our job. And yet, People are bashing us, and people are also misrepresenting us. These are the challenges we have.
Let me hear from you, Abdul, briefly, before I open the phone lines.
Yeah, and we are not quiet, and we don't have. Some of us are very much brave. We are brave in terms of confronting. 2020, we happens to be the civil society organizations that actually bring the security sector and the youth in McKinney after the whole riot. And with the community leaders for them to actually explain to us what happened. And all the civil society organizations Vanora involved in as well, they did an independent study and they brought out reports with recommendations. So civil society are actually involved into some of these things. We are not law enforcement. We'll continue to drum that when issues like that pop up, right? But then, currently, we are also doing issues around data protection. We have engaged the government, the minister, other government entity, parliament, civil society, the private sector. I mean, the conversations is going on. But people are not concerned about that other aspect of their fundamental right. What they are concerned about is for me to actually go on the street and protest. But there is a law in Sierra Leone that when I want to protest, I should inform the Inspector General of Police. And through that notification, he needs to approve by law. So when once that has been torn down, I don't need to jump on the street. If I do that, I'm holding government officials accountable for them to respect the law. And if I'm a promoter of the rule of law, then I become a disrespecter of the rule of law. I'm not setting a good example. And this is what we can sacrifice. Some of the sacrifice some of us have made, those who are pushing us to make sacrifices, they are not. They won't try that. So, I mean, we as a country, we need to know what we want. We are interested in collecting citizens to ensure that we urge the government to protect us. I mean, our security sector, their legal mandate is to secure us, not to create insecurity for us. That is unacceptable by law, and it's unacceptable through democratic practice. Human right is not a barometer. You don't measure it. I keep saying that to law enforcement, and government authorities in this country. We won't tolerate any nonsense from government when they made the attempt to ensure that they measure the human rights of certain people in this country. We'll come out openly and, condemn. But guess what? If we put out a press release, you have few Sierra Leoneans who will even dare share that wild and far. They won't do it, right? Because they are afraid of these same politicians that they are asking us to sacrifice from. Even some journalists are afraid of interviewing us on certain subject, critical subject in this country. Because maybe the media owner is afraid from government contract. So definitely, if you try that as just a reporter or editor, you're going to be thrown out of your job. And if you have your wife and kids, so what do? You walk by your boss's instruction. And the common man down there, not contributing to your life, want things to be. And they want us to be at always in these studios. Failing that you guys have to invite us. But for them, they are not seeing us. This is the reality.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. Briefly from Valnora, before I take my set of text messages for this edition of the program. You've been listening. So, summarily, what would you like to tender to the House this evening regarding the question I asked earlier?
The question about...
Yes, so we've been discussing that most civil society organizations are quite slow to respond to issues around. Well, I mentioned the killing of 5 people in yes, in 2020 in McKinney, and Abdul and Alfonso have shared their views regarding this. What are your views?
Yes. Again, I think it's an unfair statement. I think over time, all the incidents that have occurred, whether it's in Tombo, Bademba Road, in Lomsa, in Makeni, civil society organizations have either done press releases, and as my colleague mentioned, I worked with the Human Rights Organization, and we did a study. I did interviews with quite a number of people, including the police, the military, on what were their views in terms of getting the right story of what happened, their own narrative, and then doing an analysis and making recommendations. But it comes back to the point of, will the state institutions implement these recommendations? Because that is how far we can go as civil society. We can do studies, we can interview, we can engage, but it takes the politicians, it takes those in government to make the effort. And I think sometimes what the citizens need to do is sometimes to step up as well. I do recall Dr. Geraldine George, and I want to commend her for the bold steps she did in terms of the conditions that existed at the, I think, Olajurin Hospital. Her being vocal has created a change for the Olajurin Hospital, the Children's Hospital. So if citizens sometimes sit all the time and say, I'm waiting to see this CSO organization or this individual or that individual, and not taking ownership of the issues themselves to bring it to their attention. I know not everyone will be able to do that, but sometimes in your own space, in your own field, you should also be able to speak out, just like she did. And there's been such a positive response in how that hospital would be transformed to deliver to the people. So CSOs, we might not always be on the media platforms, but there are so many things that we are doing. We are serving in boards, we are serving in committees that I've mentioned, we are engaging one-on-one, we are having informal sessions. There's a lot that we do. Right. Because we are not on the media talking about all of it, and that's why you have to understand advocacy. There are things you do behind the scenes to have the effect. There are things you need to educate the public on for public opinion and public support to carry it through. But there are times some issues are best placed, discussed, and addressed behind the scenes.
Thank you so much indeed, Valnora. I will now welcome Memuna Conte, who is joining us in Studio 2 for the text messages this evening. Good evening, Memuna. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Jones, our guests and audience. We have several messages in the program tonight, and the first message I will take is from Albert Lansana. If the said individual enter the country through the airport, the immigration at the airport should have record of the individual, unless if the immigration at the airport doesn't keep track of people entering the country. Then it is a problem of cause or concern. And Simbakol says, looking back, these are the same guys who supported the PR system. Now that we have a one-party state, what do you expect will come out of it? You guys' aims seems nothing, yet allow Mother to complete his full 5 years. You go learn. Okay, James Douglas Kagbo. In the context of Sierra Leone, what does the International Committee do to support the effectiveness of the civil society? This one is coming from Swissman. Yes, political parties have their roles, but now civil society has taken the role of the politicians, and most of you supporting some of these politicians who destroy our country, Sierra Leone. It's not the first country to adopt death penalty. Let us not be threatened about the abolition of this death penalty, and not the government should hold us on standstill, because the abolition of this death penalty, what we need is Sierra Leone is transparent and development government, not a corruption government. I think these are the message we have for tonight.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Memuna, for those text messages. Briefly, we don't have much time. Let's say a few seconds. Alphonsus, may you like to respond to the texts?
Yeah.
As we summarize tonight.
Interestingly, Vanora made mention that people are only concentrating on civil society, not even thinking about themselves. Do you know how many citizens that if you say something that is not in the good books of the opposition, how they will bash at you, but they will not accept to say this is correct. It's the same thing with the ruling party. Now they are pointing finger, but they don't have the guts to tell the politician to say this thing you people are doing is not correct. They are blaming civil society for their own failures. And my last word that I also want to request your kind permission from AYV is the issue of Howard Hunt, the TV personality that was arrested in December 2022 for allegedly insulting the president and the first lady. We think we are calling the government to release her and for her to go through fair trial. And I think the media also need to take a very bold step and proactive action on that particular matter.
Thank you so much, Abdul.
We have enjoyed a very good evening, and where we have learned that majority of our citizens have, less or no knowledge about the context in which civil society operates. That's a concern to us. We should look into it, and we should work with these people. And because if they are now demanding us to be law enforcement, they are really expecting us to be immigration officers. They're expecting us to be the judges, the politicians that make the final, policy actions. Okay. So it is a serious concern. Over several issues, we have been calling government to really put a public inquiry into some of the human rights abuses, but we can't get any response from that. So the public that wants civil society to function, we need their support to work with us to continue putting pressure on government. So collectively, as citizens, we'll hold our government accountable.
Thank you so much indeed. We will end by listening to Valnora briefly in a few seconds as you summarize for us to go. Valnora?
Yes, I think it just speak out on what they want to see happen in the country. So when we say something, we know we have, or when they also say something, we can also be a part of that conversation. So if A, B, and C organization or A, B, and C individual do not speak out on an issue, it doesn't mean they too cannot speak out on the issue. And though we don't speak out on the issue, it doesn't mean we are not doing anything, or we are with the government, or with this, or with that. That's not the issue. It's about every Sierra Leonean owning what they want to see. They say, be the change that you want to see. How can you make a change where in your little sphere of influence? That's where the change starts.
Thank you so much indeed. Well, we'll end today's edition of AYV on Sunday here. On the panel, we had Alfonso Zbani, Executive Secretary, Human Rights Defenders Network, Abdul Fatoma, Chief Executive, Chadi, and Valnora Edwin, Chairperson, African Women Leaders Network, who joined us via Zoom. Thank you very much indeed for gracing our program today. Sincere thanks go to the live team in the studios. Also, my producers were Manuel Nakemo and Ransford McLean, who helped indeed the graphical guys in the back for you to see this program. Thank you so much indeed also for viewing this program. Those who dropped their comments on Facebook and our text line. We do appreciate your time and gesture. This program will be repeated on Wednesday next week. My name is Victor Jones, and you've been watching us from the top of Tile on Wester Street in the heart of the capital city, Freetown. Up next is Primetime News. Good night.